I'm going to go over a JimmyTheGiant interview with Ash Sarkar from Novara Media, where he talks about his move from the right to the left, leftist strategy, and how we can appeal to a broader audience and start winning for once. Let's get straight into the video.
I mean, when it comes to, like, you know, I know you know this, but housing's so central to inequality in this country. Do you think that maybe, whether it's like brutalism or like the big Victorian housing developments where you've got like rows and rows of terrace houses, do you think we've sort of like lost an element of that, like that dream of what housing for the working class can be?
The sad bit is like our imagination now of council housing, because of the way we allowed it to get, is now it's like they're shitholes. Like, that's what you would say, but it's a shithole. You're like, that's so sad, because it was such a like pivotal moment in British history, and it shaped the middle class, it shaped the working class, the aspirational, all this sort of lot. It gave a stability in a community, and it's like a beautiful thing, but we let it get so bad. And this is what they do, to be honest, is all the beautiful fucking public achievements we had, they let them get bad and underfund it, and then they go, look.
Yeah, that's true. If you see footage from the 50s of like council estates when they were first built, they were beautiful, they were clean, they kind of looked amazing, and there was a sense of hope and ambition after World War II. There was a sense like, we can actually do this. They were building millions, 500,000 a year at least, houses, and then they stopped in the 80s. And since then, last 40 years, pretty much nothing. And it's, like you say, Jimmy says, it's on purpose. They don't want to fund these working class areas, which is so ironic when you see how the right constantly virtue signal about the working class, the neglected working class. Well, how about fund it then? How about kind of regenerate these areas? They never talk about that. Reform, never talk about that.
How shit it is. And it's so like bad. Like people talk about the NHS and they're like, the NHS is shit. Like, that is disgusting to say that. It's like the most incredible thing that we've ever achieved as a human, like as British people, I suppose. But because we underfunded it for fucking 14 years, people's memory of all of that period before it has just evaporated. Like, you look at waiting times, if you look at the chart, 10 years ago, we actually had a problem that people were being seen too quickly.
I remember what it used to be like when you could get a GP appointment the same day.
That people didn't like that. They were like, we feel like we're being rushed through. We feel like our service isn't like, this is what they were talking about. They were like, yeah, we feel like we're being rushed. We're not being able to be like talked to and have a nice chit chat. That was like 14 years ago, and people's memory just evaporates.
Now I save up my health problems so I could get them all done at once. I'm like, okay, there's an ankle, there's a whole like, you know, cyst thing going on.
Now they say you're not allowed to, like, you can't stack them. So like, you have to do separate appointments. I had it when I was looking the other day, but it's like, yeah, it's so sad because so quickly people were like, look, it's impossible, you know, a public run. What are we talking about? We can't do this. It's like, we just did it forever. And all of a sudden, people, it annoys me, actually. It does annoy me. And that's the kind of thing. Right-wingers are basically, their purview of the world is this. It's what's happening right here with no context. You don't see that the NHS is bad because of reasons. It's because right now it's bad, so it's bad, and therefore we have to, like, I don't know, Nigel Farage would say probably switch to like a insurance model or something like that.
We're gonna get to Farage later, but like, I mean, just but I mean, just like sticking with you know, what it was like for you growing up. Like, what was the conversation about politics like in your house? Like, what do you remember your parents talking about, the people around you?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. Like, my dad was always like, my dad, if he discovered the internet, would become a right winger, but he's not because he didn't get like sidelined. But he has this sort of general hatred for like very powerful, corrupt sort of things. So he is sort of basically, I don't know what you'd call it. I guess just like in a sense a populist. He's not deeply like well read. He wouldn't support a Nigel Farage or something. But if he was like a Facebook person, he would be the type of person that could have ended up. But yeah, I would say my dad just would always be pissed at like anything political. Like, it was always shit's getting worse. They're doing this, it's bad. The potholes, all of this. Like, it was always that. So he kind of was just a bit anti it all. Like, he didn't see much trust in the system. My mum, I don't know. I don't really know her political views that much. She sort of has a bit of, you know, she's kind of empathetic to like the problems of society. But I think, I don't know where they vote. I would guess for a period of time, probably Conservative. I think they stopped voting Conservative.
I mean, when it comes to that, that sense of like I don't know, the people in power are in it for themselves, they're corrupt,
That's
they're
like what my dad would be saying.
overseeing managed decline. I mean, it sounds kind of similar to where you've ended up now. Maybe
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the like right wing element that you've suggested, but certainly that
Well, because it's
skepticism
true,
towards the
isn't it?
powerful.
It is true, and that's what the right wingers do. They take truthful feelings and truthful analysis and then pervert it. They like take
An anecdote as well. They will take their anecdote, which is powerful because that's a story. You can tell an individual story or a headline that will engage people. You know, Muslim terrorists, horrible, rightly so. But is it a systemic and broader trend that we're facing? And in some cases, Islamic terrorists is. But is it all Muslims? Well, obviously not. It's not representative. But they will use stories. And that's where the left fails. We need to engage in facts and stories because we're just so data driven. But we need to create stories because that's how you engage people. It's storytelling and listening to people. That's the two ways, not preaching and not being academic. It's actually listening to people and redirecting their hate to the right people.
the core feelings that you have, which are valid feelings, to be pissed off at the system, to be upset that your town looks shitty now. That's a fair feeling to have. But then they say, oh, the reason being is because of the migrants or, whatever. So it's like, that's how it's clever. It's so clever, but so, perverse, really, isn't it? Because it's a true, honest feeling that's fine to have, and you should have that feeling. But then they just give you, because you would have to fucking sit and research all day to figure out how shit's happened. They just give you a very simple answer. And no one really, I guess, questions it, or like, they don't do a good enough job in like the mainstream to like push back on it in a.
Do you think that's because maybe like the left and the centre left can be a bit scared of anger, so they want to like tamp it down and make it something which is more polite and managerial?
Yeah, how do you mean kind of like that?
I mean, so I think about this when I think about the Green Party, right? Which is, there are lots of good policies, lots of great people, but they're very uncomfortable with anger.
Right.
Very uncomfortable with anger. And when they come
Yeah.
across someone who's like, I'm furious about the Labour Party. I feel
Yeah.
betrayed by them. I think they're in it for themselves. I think they've betrayed their values. Like, and I've heard this
they're
from
a
people in
bit
the
scared
Greens.
to take words like that.
Yeah, they'll
'Cause
go, oh, but can't we just agree?
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I've not thought about it, but it's kind of like I think lefties kind of have an understanding of how like the power of language, the power like history of this kind of rhetoric where
I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's just these things are complicated. And if you're being given a simple headline of stop the boats or, take back control, and then you've got a whole context of history, economic inequality, neoliberalism, that story's complex. And it is really multifaceted. Like immigration itself, there's so many myths around it and it's so complicated. Just to say you're either pro or against immigration is to miss the point completely. It's like being pro economy or pro trade or against trade or against the economy. It's nonsensical. And it is hard because we need to have these arguments. And I think the left struggle to have the arguments with the right. So when someone says, oh, my town's a shithole, and they say it's immigrants, we need to have a simple story that counteracts it. But the problem is, even if we did have that, and I think we do have it, how do you get that across in the media when Nigel Farage is more likely to get 10, 20 times the airtime as the Greens? It's impossible. It's impossible to get your message across. So there's a broader media environment here. And Novara are very aware of that.
leads and stuff like that. So maybe it's like sometimes a bit almost they know too much, so they may be a bit cautious. Yeah, it's a fair point. And that can kind of like hold them back in a way. I've not really thought about it, but it is I would say there's something to that.
It'll be in your next video.
Yeah.
This. I mean, in terms of the development of your own politics, like what were the issues, what were the ideas that you were engaging with when you were younger, maybe when you were a teenager?
Just because I kind of wanted to just talk on that thing you were saying. I just had a thought and it kind of escaped me. About like the being scared of like that. Yeah. Sorry, I just had you maybe think of something. But
No, go for it. It's the best bit of these conversations.
But like, this is what I try and do, and I guess perhaps because I've not got an academic background, and maybe I'm making a mistake, but I try and like take populist type feelings or even like talking points and just spin it to like left-wing shit, basically. Like, I am not anti being pro-British at all, but I try and change what that means. Like, if you say, I love Britain, I'm a British patriot, great. You fucking love your country, you love the people around you, you love your community, and you want to help everyone in your community. My definition of being like British and pro-British is being in the people around me, like the country. To someone else, it's like white people, or it's like people with this accent, or like whatever. And so, like, I try and just take those things and redirect it. I basically try and do what right wingers do to us, but do it back at them. So it's like, take the feelings of anger. That's where you were saying, like, the Green Party, maybe they need to take those feelings and just fucking direct it to the actual problem. And I wouldn't say I guess there is a risk that it can become radical. And but what is the alternative is to allow the other side to be radical and go in a very dark direction, or we take and play some of those games and hope that we can manage I don't know like what is the answer, but I always try and do that. Like, I always say I'm super pro-British. I'm pro-British, and I would be like, I would personally love to see us not make our towns completely cater to like supermarkets that are like multinational companies. I would much rather we had like farmers markets that are all local traders, and they could all come, and like maybe we subsidize it, maybe we help them, and then it's local, it's British, it's communal. I love that shit. There's nothing wrong with that for me. But I suppose some people on the left maybe would be a little bit scared of like, just even because it sounds nationalistic, and that's like, perhaps there's a problem there. But I don't want it to be that. Like,
I mean,
Yeah, we need to take that for ourselves. And I agree. You've got to read. That's why I always go on about the freedom of speech argument, or freedom. Like, Marx didn't advocate for equality. He advocated for freedom and people's needs, meeting people's needs, not just their equity. And that's what we've got to do, because they're constantly talking about freedom of speech. We need to put it back at them. What about our freedom of speech? And frame arguments as freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom to express how you want to do. That's it. Constantly just go on about freedom, because it works. When you frame a problem as freedom, like ownership of the means of production, why do workers have to sell their labor? Why can't we have more freedom, more democracy? You frame it in a positive way, and that's what the left have got to do. What, you're against democracy, you're against freedom of speech, because the right, it's hard to say that, because they're going to be like, well, no. And it's like, well, okay, what about freedom to identify as the gender you weren't assigned at birth? And they go, well, yeah, that's fine, but they'll have caveats. So you go, oh, if that's fine, great, let's move on. You've got to use their own arguments against them, because they're so dishonest that you've got to kind of embrace the same. Like, Trump, for example, loves the Gish Gallop. I don't think we should use that. I think we should go for basic arguments, and when they do the Gish Gallop, which they do, right-wingers do, they just throw out 20 different talking points. You got to just jump on one and just debunk it. Okay, freedom of speech. Okay, I believe in freedom of speech. And then list, okay, Donald Trump doesn't. He, famously sued Bill Maher for a joke. Is that freedom of speech? And also concede to them sometimes. Like, on the right, say, yeah, I agree with that. Don't always be, always disagreeable. Concede some points, because it makes you seem more honest.
but when you talk about like pro-British, like, I entirely agree with you. I love a farmer's market.
that's what I'm saying.
A farmer's market. Like, the most like woo hippie thing that I'll buy into is like unpasteurized milk. Like, I'll take.
Oh my God, you're on that.
No, I mean, I tasted.
I don't necessarily think farmers market, but I think tap into the anti-corporate reform sentiment, definitely, because they know that the corporation, but it's like they've got a kind of inconsistent, incoherent ideology that we know we're being screwed over by the big man, but somehow Nigel Farage, another big man, is able to solve it, which is, you can't reconcile that logically. So there is the right movement there to push that in the right direction.
It once, and it was like unhomogenized unpasteurized milk, and I was like, maybe I should just get botulism. Like, maybe that's fine.
It's worth it.
I was like, it's delicious, it's so creamy. But like, I think maybe the bit that people disagree with, and I wonder what you think about this, is, does it mean that you've got to whitewash and rose tint our history?
But that's what I don't think. Like, that's a good point. So what I try and say is like, being proud of like what historic Britishness is just purely how you look at it. Like, I look at the battle for workers' rights and our push towards a more equal society. That is a thing that happened here. Like we had, workers' rights, trade union, all that sort of stuff, the labor movement. We kind of spearheaded it, and we were kind of unfortunately forced to because, that was the world that was created for us. But there's a sort of there's two stories of Britain, which is the powerful type, all the fucked up shit, and then there's people that actually tried to stop that and fight back about it, like the women's rights movements, the anti-slavery movement. All of that was a section of the people that fought against the nasty forces.
So is it about tracing a line through that, I guess, you pick out the stories and the events and the people which embody the kind of politics you want, the one of solidarity, pushing back against power.
Yeah, and picking those figures like a Clement Attlee or like faces of those eras or movements and groups of people that push towards something good. And obviously back then, like, there's probably problems with the trade unions. They probably weren't like super inclusive or whatever, but they started the journey towards where we're trying to take it.
Have you ever heard of the Lancashire cotton famine?
On the colonial history, I think there's the right are so fragile on this. You say, yes, we can criticize our own history. We can look at the dark side. How fragile are you? You can't criticize history. Like, we can do that with any other history. We can do that with World War II, Germany. We can do it with the Civil War in America. We can do it in ancient. Like, we should be able to criticize horrible things we've done. Frame it that way. Why? What are you so afraid of? Why are you so afraid of our history and how horrible the empire was? 500 years of colonialism, slaughter. We ruled a quarter. We need to reconcile that and go forward. Like, the right are so like, oh, you can't criticize. What about freedom of speech? Frame it as a freedom of speech. We should be able to look at our own history and understand it and learn from it. That's it. But they're so weak in it. Like, oh, you're criticizing Britain. You don't love it. You hate it. If you don't like it, get out. It's just like, what? Why can't we criticize it? It's just, it's so annoying me. It winds me up right.
No.
So it's an incredible moment in our history, and I didn't find out about it until a couple of years ago, and I was like, wow, like, this is actually a story that people need to hear. So the Lancashire cotton famine happened, the American Civil War was raging, and because of organising that was happening within the churches in Lancashire, the workers in the cotton mills said, we're not going to work on slave-picked cotton. We're going to uphold the embargo.
Damn.
And what that meant was they couldn't work, they couldn't earn a living, and people starved. There was rioting, there was disturbances because these white, English, working class people were bearing the cost on their own bodies.
Damn, that's sick.
Which is incredible, right?
Yeah, exactly. It'd be so much hard. Like, who was it talking about? It was like how they managed to achieve, let's say, the post-war consensus. How they, in their scenarios, in their life, like their living standards, managed to achieve it. Like, we all feel powerless to someone like an Elon Musk and that, but at least we got the fucking internet. At least we got, we eat, most of us eat okay, so we're not like skinny and struggling, and we don't live in slums as much. We have, and those lot did it from the fucking ghetto, like the slums, and they managed to like organize together. They had to hand out bits of paper to each other to explain their theories. We have like, I don't know, like there is some way of looking at the past and being completely okay with saying, like, we did some absolute fucked up shit and we should 100% be accountable for that. We need to try and, even the way the world works now still is based on that dynamic. Like, that's all like that extractive model that is still there. But there has always been that other story of people trying to undo that and change it and fight back against that. And I'm proud of that.
Does that make you feel optimistic when you reflect on it?
Yeah, 100%. Because I'm just thinking, like, man, if they did it in those scenarios, we're fucking easy for us. I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic, but
it is easy, but also we're too comfortable. I think when you're on the poverty line, you're working 16 hours a day. I think there's a sense of, well, more community then. There would have been way more solidarity with people, and they would have been more reliant on people because you had to be. Now, people don't have to be reliant on each other because we've got it good enough. You don't have to talk to anybody anymore. That wouldn't have been the case then. And there is massive hope though, but the right don't want us learning this history. That's why they're opposed to history and they want to rewrite history. That's why they're scared of toppling statues in Bristol Harbour. They don't want us to learn this history. That's why they get so defensive. Like when you talk about the empire, they're like, "Oh well, we need to stop going on about it." No, we can talk about this. Grow up. Be a man. Confront your past. If you're so proud of Britain, you need to both look at the good and the bad. And it's not a chart where you tick like, "Oh, we did all the good things, we did all the bad things." We need to be honest about it and go, "Right, this is what we did. This is the truth. What happened?" Because we actually don't know the extent to what we did, because I think a lot of the documents were destroyed. So we will never reconcile this. This will go on for decades, I think.
I mean, you mentioned this already, and this might be what people know you from as well. Is that part of your political journey was spent on the alt-right? What was it about the alt-right that attracted you? What maybe made you vulnerable or susceptible to some of these ideas? Like, how did you get there?
Yeah, like to be clear, I would never say I was alt-right. I was like, that's why I write pipeline, because I was like in that way. So I was definitely right-wing. I'd say I landed on like being a libertarian, like right conservative, socially a little bit conservative. I'd be that sort of thing where you'd be like, I'm totally okay with gays, LGBT. But, you know, there is a bit of a problem with the trans thing. Like you'd be like, trans people are okay, but the
ideology,
the ideology, the agenda of the trans agenda, all this shit, and that's how they do it a little bit, because they won't let you. They don't.
It's so insane, that framing, because it's such projection. Like the idea that there's a lobby, or I mean, they think there is, like, because there are obviously institutions that, but somehow that means that there's an agenda, like they're coming for your children. And this is the same language that you always use against gays, black people, Jews. Like it's always a conspiracy. Like the trans people have got too much power. They're going to trans your kid. It's so conspiratorial, anti-empiricist, and they just hate life. That's it. Like, and it is fascist. Like, if you are anti-trans, fair enough. If you're ill-informed in it, I think that's a different argument, and you're informed, and but most people, I think, don't care about trans people, and the people that do are very suspect people.
Want to present the extreme shit just straight away. And to be fair, it progressed. It got worse. Like it where the right was in like 2016 is different to now. It's gone more mask off. But for me, it was a lot like I really hate to say it, but it was sort of aesthetics. It was like the bros were right wing. I can't, just to completely simplify it. It was like dudes who were sort of like me were right wing, and being a young 20-year-old lad who didn't go to uni and was like trying to make my own thing. Like I was setting up businesses. I was like making clothing brands and like made a vegan food store. Would you believe I was a vegan right winger, which is mad. But like, yeah, it just felt like the people who were talking to that, which was the get up and go get it sort of shit, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, they were obviously all right wing. And I wasn't really, maybe it existed, but I wasn't really hearing like a message from the left that felt sort of, here is an action plan of how to take your life.
Yeah, agency.
Yeah, there was none of that. Like, at least from what I was aware of, there was no like,
yeah, the left are pretty bad on this. Like, it's like you can just do what you want, live your life. And to an extent, that's true. If you want to eat a load of food and be unhealthy, be overweight, if you're happy with that, I'm fine with that. But if you're not happy with that and you want to lose weight, you need to lose weight. But the left have kind of lost that ground on personal responsibility. And it's been taken by figures like Jordan Peterson, where it's like they will take control of your life. And we can have it both ways. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. We can say, yes, social mobility has declined or stagnant. Yes, inequality will probably determine your life chances. Your postcode will determine your life. But that doesn't mean you don't work hard and you try and make the best of your life and the best of your situation. Because if you're strong, you save money, you're able to do what you can do. That's all that matters, because we need strong people. And I do worry that figures like Jack Polanski, although his politics are great, he doesn't come across as strong, and he needs to appeal to a wide audience. And yes, he's London-based, he's a vegan, he's all these stereotypes, and he is a nice guy, but we need someone who looks a bit like, like a average guy, just people, again, Nigel Farage, someone people can relate to.
Notable left-wing person who would be like, look, this is the scenario we're in. It's fucked. this is what we can do, this is how we can organize, this is how we can move forward as a people. It was sort of like when I would hear the left, and bearing in mind I was only hearing the left from the right, so it was like they're talking about really complicated, from my understanding now, because I kind of get it a bit better, but like really nuanced academic understandings of like feminism, white supremacy, all of this stuff. And I'm like, how is this shit actionable in my life?
Was it mostly like on the internet? So like the internet was like the shop window of politics.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Because that's what annoys me is like now I look into, I'm like, man, they've made some fucking good points. And I just wrote it off
I'm doing a video, babe, so don't come through, please. Thank you.
entirely. Because when you're a young 20-year-old, you don't give a shit about that. You just want to fucking figure out how you're going to ever afford a house or how you're ever going to make some money. And like thinking about the nuances of white supremacy when I'm sat there trying to work out how to make some money is probably not that conducive to like a good future for me. So
Did you feel like people were like effectively saying you've got privilege and you're like, where? Like I'm trying to have some privilege. Like that's what I'm working towards.
That was one of the things I felt like the right wing told me to think. Like there was an element of that. Because I grew up like my parents weren't, they were sort of like, I don't really know how you'd put it. They own their own house now. We were never like the first people to get the PlayStation or anything, but they sent me to a private school. They got all their inheritance and they put me to go to a private school when I was like 13, 14. So I had a weird middle upbringing of going to public schools. My dad was like a carpet fitter, mum like a dinner lady kind of thing. Effectively, I was middle class in the sense that I had stability. And I think stability is like that key feeling. So I wouldn't say I was hard up because I never struggled. Like there was never a problem. We weren't getting the newest stuff. I wasn't wearing the Nikes and that, but like we never had to struggle and my parents didn't have to kick me out for quite a while. So I would always say that stability fundamentally makes my life different from lots of other people and was a massive advantage and a massive privilege. But I wasn't looking at my life like, from the fact that I'm a white guy, that I had some inherent privilege. I wasn't aware of that. And so then when I'm looking and seeing how hard I'm working at life and, I'm doing everything and whatever. Perhaps when Jordan Peterson tells me that the left are saying that you're a privileged man, but you're working really hard. Yeah, it probably like falls on deaf ears a little bit. Like it wasn't a compelling thing to listen to.
I wonder what you think about this, which is I think that I've been trying to like turn the privilege idea around and around in my head and go like, because it doesn't feel quite right, like the right word. Like maybe it describes, my husband's a white English guy. It's good for describing what doesn't impact him. Maybe it's good at describing, if he's in a head-to-head, like, job application contest with someone else, like, how that might benefit him. But if we were talking about, say like a white person who lives in like, I don't know, let's say Blackburn or something, and like they're dealing with like deprivation, lack of opportunity, lack of infrastructure. Like for me to come along with my like London self and being like white privilege, like it just seems like it wouldn't be speaking to their life.
But I don't think you're necessarily speaking, like when you're talking about that and thinking about it and the academics that write about that, they're not looking at the geezer in Blackpool. They're looking at a wider, zoomed out look on the whole of society and how on average things pan out because of different, literally because of your skin color. Like, and they are right. They are completely right on those things. But if you're listening to a right winger tell you what they're trying to tell you about it, and they're constantly focusing on that topic, they're trying to say that because you're white, they bastardize it so quickly. Because obviously that same left-wing academic would be like, yeah, class is a massive factor. But because the right really wanted to ham and focus in on that, because they knew it was divisive to be like, oh, look, black people have it even worse than you. It's like, it was a good tactic of them to make it divisive. And I would say there's probably some people on the left that like played into it, like they would only talk about that and it probably didn't help. But
maybe there was an overcorrection, like race wasn't visible and then it was becoming visible and you're like,
and it's like, it's a topic, and this is the thing about a lot of these ideas, they're very complicated and you need to be properly taught about them. You can't watch a 10-minute YouTube, you can't watch Jordan Peterson on PragerU and think you now understand feminism. It's like you need to like actually understand it, and they're so easy to bastardize. Like you can easily like be really reductive on what someone that's wrote some academic paper that's this thick and then you turn it into a 10-minute PragerU video. It's like you can obviously make it sound as bad as possible, but like their focus isn't trying to say that the guy in Blackpool, he's better off than someone because he's...
And that drives me insane because it just shows you how much of an advantage the right has. Because I've heard so many right-wingers in my comments just kind of just completely dismiss feminism. And I guarantee they've not engaged with any feminist critique. be it first wave, second wave, or more recent third wave. Laura Bates, Laurie Penny. I mean, Nina Power's gone a bit mad now, but actually engage with what the arguments are. It's like, oh, feminists are crazy or the feminist agenda. There's no knowledge there. And how do you argue against somebody who has no idea what they're talking about? Same with Marxism as well. They'll have a few, talking points like, oh, Marx was racist, and then, other stuff that they completely don't understand what Marxism is. How do you deal with that? Because, yes, you could argue these academic debates shouldn't necessarily be mainstream. And I think they should to an extent. Like, privilege is a nuanced conversation. Men have privilege, women have privilege, white people have privilege. We need to talk about that. But what is the priority? I think it should be about priority in the public realm. Like, if we're going to talk about certain things, what is the priority here? And that's difficult. That is difficult.
White or something. And that's the thing. It was really like, I suppose, I don't know, if I was to criticize the left or something, I suppose I didn't hear a lot of people talking about like class issues. They weren't going like, look, we understand everyone has it fucked. We all have it fucked. And this should be the main focus, is how fucked everything is. Black people, women, they also have it more fucked. We should work together with them to try and help them. And all of us work together to like have a better outcome. So maybe I didn't hear much of a class voice, probably because that isn't the one that was like, well, I just really think that the right wingers didn't really want to engage with that. So the people that were talking about that stuff probably weren't getting the same. Yeah, they're getting ignored. So, but that's it. Because like for me, I really like focus heavily on class. I think it's so important. And then you understand within class, there's even within that, there are people that have it even worse than you because of that. But it's much better strategically and politically to understand you're all collectively together in a mission to try and like improve all living standards.
I mean, does it always work out? I guess.
Well, Ash Sarkar spoke about class very perceptively in the latest book, Minority Rule. Really good book. Highly recommend it. And she talks about how the right have kind of bastardized the class. White working class is like a cultural identity, divorced from the economics. And that's what we're talking with now. Because I've heard Sargon, people talk about the working class, the kind of neglected working class, white working class. But they don't actually talk about it in economic terms. They talk about it in like ethno-nationalist identity. Like, we're losing our culture. Not like they're not being paid enough. And that's the most pernicious element of how we can't talk about class. Because you think people talking about class in the last 10 years, they'd really engage with that? They'd find a way to make it disingenuous. Because the right are really intelligent in flipping the script and using their power to misrepresent and lie and deceive. And even if when we do talk about class, which we will now, they'll find ways to fight it and try to stamp it out or distort it in some way, like they did with the white working class as a kind of cultural identity, not an economic one.
I guess like in a simple, like, you add these identity characteristics together and then you can tell who's got more power and more privilege. Because I was thinking about this with regards to I guess like people who like live in the area that I live, which is Tottenham, which is, you'll have families where the girls go on to further and higher education and the boys don't, and they're both like from an ethnic minority working class family, but there seems to be an element of social mobility which is available to girls going through the education system that isn't for boys, because of the way in which boys get criminalized, the ways in which they get like treated by police, the impact of like I guess like serious youth violence on their lives, stuff like that. If I was looking at that just through a kind of like male privilege lens, I wouldn't be able to grapple with how that's impacting that particular community.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because I do think as an analysis it is more a broader, like you're looking at broad trends and broad patterns, and there will be individual cases where it doesn't pan out the same way. And that's, I don't know, like I do think from a messaging perspective, it's just it would, I don't know, I think that's why a lot of us are starting to talk about class more, because it's just more, at least from the game of politics, when it comes to like actual academic understanding of these topics it probably is much more nuanced than just class. Like I've heard people criticize that just class perspective before, but I think from the position where our opposition, at least in America, is Donald Trump, and here is Farage, and it's going that way, trying to get into the nitty and gritty of these academic understandings and very complicated structures is probably not the play in order for us to win anything at the moment. I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong, but I just think, yeah.
Is it about to like put it very, very crude?
I agree, but we have to be wary of class reductionism, like reducing everything to class, because there are other struggles. Like, I mean, the trans thing, we've fallen back on that with that Supreme Court ruling. So we need to be really wary of just not going the other way and going, right, okay, class is related to feminism, black rights, trans rights. We can talk about them in a holistic way, guided by class. Like that's the thing. We can't just, it doesn't mean just talk about one thing. Like, right, talk about class. No, because this will relate to, I mean, trans people are some of the poorest in society. They do certain work, a lot of, I mean, a bit of a stereotype, sex work, low kind of paid jobs, victims of crime. That is related to class politics. So there is a link there. And I think we shouldn't necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Crudely, like the gap between your gone to uni, ethnic minority, lives in London, and white guy lives in Blackpool, didn't go to uni. That gap between you two is a lot smaller than the gap between guy in Blackpool and Elon Musk and Nigel Farage.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and that's like one of the things I was quite optimistic about was like that stat where it said something along the lines of like middle class people identify more as working class, and a lot of people laugh. They're like, "You lot don't know shit." It's like, no, that's a fucking good thing because it means like people start to understand that we actually are affected more. A decision that affects Michael affects like Barry as well. Like the same thing that a politician does will benefit the very wealthy person, whilst our lives get worse, both the middle class and the working class. And it's like that connection when they can see that we're affected by the same things more and more as that gap gets closer. I feel like inequality is reducing when it comes to middle class and working class. It's getting worse on the other end. But as that happens, people start realizing that actually the structure is flawed. Because I think one of like, I don't know, like, I'm not super well read on like theory and stuff, but I know a lot of people say like the idea of having like, what do they call it? The petty bourgeois. And all that sort of shit. And it's like, that's quite good for keeping that system because it means that these people won't unify with the working class people because they benefit slightly from the system. But if they're starting to lose their benefits, then that brings a political opportunity for them to like work together and identify together.
There's a guy called Dan Evans who wrote a book called Nation of Shopkeepers.
I want to read that.
It's so good. It's so good. Like I disagree with him on some stuff, but I think that it's one of those things where it's like, even where I disagree with you, I'm so fucking glad you wrote this.
Cool,
like,
yeah.
And what he says is that you've got this petty bourgeois layer, right?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
And what he says, which is interesting, is that there's sort of two sides to it, which is you've got your traditional like plumbers doing well for themselves, electricians, self-employed, like they've got a lot of autonomy and control over their working lives. You know, they earn as much as they're able to work, right? There's a connection between how hard you work and how much you earn when you've got that kind of job. And then you've got downwardly mobile graduates who've like, you own your laptop but nothing else, and you do your tippy-tappy freelance copy editing job. And what he says is that like, you know, this layer of petty bourgeois, like you've got these two groups which are like similar in class status but totally different in outlook.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, was he on here? Or was he...
Yeah.
I think I might have seen that one. I think I was playing Rocket League at the time. Yeah, I seem to specifically remember.
But it's like, how do you bring together people whose cultural outlook is so different? Like the world you live in, the place you live, your habits, your, you know, the things you like, the things you dislike. It's like on opposite ends of the spectrum, even though economics has brought you like this.
Yeah. I wonder how they did it in the past. Is it's like, yeah, it is true. Like when, I just think as you start seeing, like, I think one of the things that opened my mind, like opened my eyes to a little bit was when I was on the Trull podcast and I would look at them as like middle-class white women. That's completely fine. I would see that and I was like, they're probably well off. They're probably doing really well. I'm sure their lives are fine. But they were complaining about some prices about something. They're like, yeah, the price is insane. And I'm looking at it in my head, my biases would tell me they don't worry about money. There's nothing like that in their lives. And I was thinking, the more you see that, the more you see like middle class people worrying about money and just feeling like one of the things, to be honest, it's the irony of like, they always say as you get more successful, as you make more money, you become more right wing, or as you get older, but it's kind of the same thing, I suppose. But for me, it was the total opposite. Like when I sort of achieved like, I guess, some form of success and like did well, made decent money, but like not caked, but just doing okay. I was like, my life should feel much easier than it does.
Yeah.
Like realistically, I shouldn't have like people are making less than me, but like 20, 30 odd years ago, they were living very comfortable lives. But now I'm like, I did spend a lot this year because I bought a house and got married and stuff like that.
Mashallah, brother.
Yeah, lucky, as the Ukrainians would say. But yeah, like I kind of just realized like I'm getting pissed off at bills. When the ground rent, I got a bill the other day. It was £2,000. Just I own my place, but I have to pay £2,000 a month. £2,000 a year, sorry.
Oh, for like the leaseholder thingy.
And I'm like, and then when I drive to London, I get a congestion charge, and I'll be an idiot and forget to renew the auto pay and blah blah blah. I get fined. It's like 160 quid.
We'll stop there. Go and watch the rest of the video on Novara Media. Comment below your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.